Wednesday evening was senior night in the Lenovo Center for the NC State men's basketball team, and a senior night to remember, going out with a W.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Our Thursday show is brought to you by Nissan. This episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned later in the episode when we reveal to you the Armada Team of the Week. Happy Thursday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Kenton, Wednesday evening was senior night for the NC State men's basketball team against the Pittsburgh Panthers. And NC State actually won the basketball game. It was a 71-63 victory over Pitt. And it was relatively comfortable in terms of NC State led for, I think, the majority of the game. Pitt only had the lead for, it might have been like under 2 minutes of this. Shot pretty well from the perimeter. They buried 10 threes. And something I thought was really cool, especially on senior night, all 71 points were scored by seniors. No freshmen, no sophomores, no juniors, purely production off of seniors. Very nice to get a win in the last home game of the year.
It was absolutely nice to get a win in the last game in the Lenny Center. And you know, it's what we've been asking for all year. It's what we've been begging for. I mean, it wasn't like this was a gang-busting performance where everything went great and this was just an irredeemably great performance by the Pack. But this was one of those moments where you shoot 34.5% from three. You shoot 81% from the free throw line. You out-rebound the other team. How many times have we done that all season? How many times have we shot respectively from the field, from the free throw line, and out-rebounded the team all in the same game? Well, congratulations. You got it on senior night. I don't think there's a single one. As a matter of fact, we'll do some research and look that up on the next break here, but I don't think there's been a single game where we've shot 34% or more from the three, 80% or more from the free throw line, and won the rebounding battle against a power four team. So it's great to see, and this game made a bunch of questions arise because you start to ask, like, well, why weren't certain guys playing more all year? And, you get all these, this guy had this guy had that. At the end of the day, at this point, it's crying over spilled milk. The milk is spilled. It's out. This season was objectively one of the worst in NC State history. It is what it is.
A lot of those questions, both last night and, something we saw consistently over the course of the season, centered around Breon Pass. Now, Brion Pass is a very special player on this team, being that he stuck with the program for all 4 years, never transferred, never complained about not seeing a ton of minutes over the course of 4 years. He was on the program that won an ACC title last season. He was on the program that went to a Final Four. He's also seen two of the worst seasons in NC State basketball history. So you talk about seeing a little bit of everything. That would define Breon Pass's time in the red and white. But on senior night, he gets his first career start in 4 seasons, and he ties his career high with 14 points. I'm so proud of Breon. And what you saw from Breon, or his character, is something that's going to be very rare now in the new age of college sports. Very rarely are you going to see a player stick with a program for 4 consecutive years, especially when you're not playing that much. It's so easy to throw in the towel and seek greener pastures and try and get better playing time elsewhere. But Breon stayed committed to NC State year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. No matter what, he was NC State through and through, and we will forever remember him for that. We're going to get into some of the impact of the seniors later on in the show, but just wanted to start with Breon Pass. So proud of him for sticking with the Pack, and he will forever be appreciated for it.
Yeah, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that, man. This is the type of stuff that, like you talked about, it's more rare because transferring is not only not as frowned upon as it was before, it's much easier. It's a much easier process than it ever has been. And so, again, to see a young man stick through 4 years, 4 years or really 3 years of playing sparingly, getting off to somewhat of a hot start in his freshman year and then not seeing as much playing time going forward, for him to just keep chopping wood, carrying water, for him to be in a situation where this year guys are, a lot of people are saying, hey, you're looking at a situation where guys that you're better than are playing more minutes than you. To see a situation in this junior and sophomore year where you're playing less minutes than you did as a true freshman, he just kept at him. He just kept coming. He just kept coming. And we were all very excited for what we saw out of him on senior night. If you did watch the game, even if you didn't, go back and rewatch the condensed version, because again, what a joy it was to get to experience Breon Pass. Despite Grayson and I pleading for him to play a little bit of football earlier, we understand that it was much more of a familiar wish thing to members of his family and all that. We get it, but what a career for that young man, being a part of one of the only championship teams in the Big Three in quite some time. More power to him.
Certainly appreciated the mindset you saw from Brion as well, just letting it fly. I mean, he attempted 9 threes. I'd venture to guess it's probably the most he's ever attempted in any single game at NC State. He hit 4 of them for 44% shooting from beyond the perimeter. That was the most 3-pointers he's ever hit in a single game. I think the previous mark was 2, so doubled that in just one night. But I want to talk more about the seniors in particular. As I already told you, they scored all 71 points of this game. If you look at the box score based on the minutes played per player, it looks as if that was probably the unofficial game plan. I mean, Trey Parker only played 2 minutes. Paul McNeil only played 8. Bryce Hurd only 6. Every other senior was well into double digits, and that was all 71 of your points. Dontrez Styles gave you a double-double. He had 13 and 13. Ben Middlebrooks ended up fouling out, but gave you 11 points, 6 of 7 from the foul line before he did. Again, just really good to see these guys win. And the other half of this conversation is, yes, the win is ultimately all for naught because Notre Dame did come back and beat Stanford in the wee hours of Wednesday night. If you stayed up to watch, obviously you saw that play out. Many of us also woke up to see it on Thursday morning. So a very disappointing end for NC State's season. That does mean that they will not be in the ACC tournament as Notre Dame is ahead of us now with no tiebreak to be found. It's very disappointing. And to think about an ACC tournament without NC State in it, it's almost unfathomable. And for many of y'all that have grown up in North Carolina and even the early days in school when the teacher used to wheel in the TV on the TV cart to watch the ACC tournament, NC State was always featured in that tournament. And to think that we will not see them this year in this new format when there's now 18 teams in the conference and 3 miss it, NC State will be missing it. It is unbelievably hard to stomach. And it just furthers the disappointment that's attached this year. Coming off of last year, we've talked ad nauseum about it for the entirety of the season, but it's really hard to comprehend how poorly this season has ended up.
There's no way around that. I mean, it's even hard to wrap my mind around, especially because, again, of the things that we saw last night. And, you talk about Brion Pass and the fact that this is the most threes that he's ever attempted in his career. But, I mean, statistically speaking, this year, this is about what he's been. He's been a 40% three-point shooter all year. That's 4 of 9 is slightly above 40%, but you get the point. That's who he is. It's the thing that is, and again, like I said, I'm not going to be the person to cry over spilled milk if I told y'all not to do it. But again, the thing that is so confusing here is floor spacing was such a thing that we kept saying, we need more, we need more, we need more. This game was not an anomaly in terms of like he shot 80 or 90% from 3 on 10 shots and it greatly boosted up. No, 4 of 9 in one ball game is not enough to take you to an entirely different stratosphere in terms of your three-point shooting percentages. So, it just leaves you scratching your head a little bit saying, why didn't we get more of this kid, man? But it is what it is. I will say this team played with some pride. This team played with some pride. Because
you can see it last night.
When you know you need some help, it's easy to roll over and say, all right, we're good here. But Pitt objectively has been a much better team than us all year. and you go out there and get a win. So more power to them.
Again, very somber end to this basketball season. They will not be in the ACC tournament. That leaves just one regular season game left on the schedule. It will be on the road against Miami. If absolutely nothing else, perhaps we can end this season with a little bit of ice cream. I think the players have earned it at this point, struggling as much as they have. I think the fan base has earned at least a couple scoops of ice cream for having to sit through the entirety of the season. So hopefully they can go on the road and finish the regular season slate, at least at the very least, the smallest little silver lining ever, because this year sucked, possibly with some ice cream against Miami on Saturday.
I think there's a bigger silver lining there. This team has not won a road game in conference or out of conference all year.
That too.
This is your opportunity to not be defeated on the road. This is your opportunity. And I'm telling you this as a Lions fan back when they were 0-16. Going defeated in any regard is the worst thing in the world. It makes you feel, again, I've told y'all a million times, when you're losing, the ice ain't as cold, the jokes ain't as funny, nothing is as good. The food tastes a little funny. Everything just is not as good when you're losing. Find a way to end this season on a high note. Even if it is a minuscule 2-game win streak where you know, it's not really 2-game win streak, still don't make tournament, whatever. Find a way to end this season with some pride and not end defeated on the road.
I think Saturday is the definition of a character game because the game means absolutely nothing. You have nothing left to play for. The season has been a complete train wreck. Show us one last time what kind of heart you have, especially on the road. This will show us the true character, the true colors, I guess you could say. Many of us probably won't watch, and I think that's also a very valid way to feel about this season. Again, looking at probably the second worst, maybe grand scheme of things, missing the ACC tournament could be considered the worst season in NC State basketball history. Show us something. Give us a little bit of something, even though it doesn't really matter. We'll see what kind of character they have on Saturday on the road against Miami. Coming up next, we're going to talk about some of the impact that'll be left behind from the senior class in particular. This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. The Nissan Armada Team of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, our Locked On College basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart. From the top-seeded stars to the unexpected upsets, these guys showcase the strength and sheer power needed to push their team forward. This week's Armada and clear-cut Team of the Week are the Houston Cougars. Since joining the Big 12 last season, the Cougars have gone a combined 33-4 in conference games, winning the regular season title by multiple games both years. There is no team in college basketball that more capably embodies the rugged Armada more than Kelvin Sampson's squad. Houston's tenacious defense leads the nation in fewest points allowed per game for the second consecutive season. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer. That's exactly what the Houston Cougars have been up to. It's clear that our Team of the Week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of Nissan's outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Middle portion of our Thursday show, wanted to have some conversations about the impacts that'll be left behind from this year's senior class. Obviously, 4 of these seniors were on last year's team. They'll be ACC champions forever. They'll always have the Final Four trip to be remembered by here in Raleigh. We had 3 additional seniors, Brandon Huntley-Hatfield, Dontrez Styles, and Marcus Hill. Put an asterisk next to Marcus Hill's name. He actually announced that he will be exercising his bonus year. He falls under the Diego Pavia ruling umbrella, so he has an extra year of eligibility. He announced that he will be using it. Also said he will be returning to NC State. We'll keep our eyes peeled on that one. We'll talk about the 2 newcomer seniors that won't be here next year. That's Brandon Huntley-Hatfield and Dontrez Styles. How will you remember those 2 for their time in the red and white?
Well, first off, anybody who spent time in the red and white, that's an exclusive fraternity, right? Like that's and so whenever I talk about athletes, please understand that it's with the understanding of even us guys who, if you look at my football career, I wasn't a guy that was of note. I didn't make any all-conference teams or anything like that. And yet I still know, and the coaches still know, and my teammates still know how much I poured out for this university. And so I'd say the same thing for these 2 young men. And Dontrez Styles in particular was if there was a smidgen of floor spacing to be found, it was because of him.
Yep.
If there was anybody who was able to get to the lane and teams weren't just saying, you know what, let's just put 4 guys at each corner of the paint and see how they do. It was because of Dontrez. I mean, he was the spacing on this team for a good chunk of the season. And as far as Brandon Huntley-Hatfield goes, wasn't quite the season we were expecting. And I think we can all be honest about that. But, I still look at him and I say, in a front court that was relatively thin, I mean, he was, objectively speaking, he was there. He was there, and that's just kind of what that is. And obviously, we didn't want the season to go this way. We would have wanted them to have very memorable years with the Pack, a la DJ Horn or somebody along those lines. But it just doesn't work out that way. It didn't work out that way in this instance, and so that's pretty much what I look at these two and say.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, full transparency. It's a bit hard to paint all of this in a positive light, but I just kind of feel bad for them that this is how their final year of college basketball has panned out for them. And there was some excitement for them coming into the program. Obviously, Dontrez Styles was a former Dirty Foot clubber, so it was very interesting to have that dynamic as a player to put on the red and white. But it sucked for all parties involved that the season did not go the way that we at least hoped it would, or even thought that it might early in the season. So it's a tough pill to swallow. Moving forward here, again, won't really talk about Marcus Hill as much because he will be returning. But the 4 that were a part of last year, obviously that's Breon Pass, Ben Middlebrooks, Jaden Taylor, and MOC. Those 4, we'll kind of work our way through here. We'll start with Breon because we've already talked about him. How will you remember Breon Pass as a Wolfpacker, Kenton?
That young man is loyal to the soil, okay? He is, a young man that, objectively speaking, there were other opportunities out there for him. You know it, and a young man that I look at, and it's the fact that I am stuck in this last season with a bit of a what if about him, in terms of what if he had gotten big minutes all year. It's disappointing, but again, the loyalty cannot be understated. It really and truly cannot be understated. It feels very Michael Allen-esque. Remember when we were talking about Michael Allen, like, oh man, why isn't he getting more touch? What's happening? And there were all these stories floating around about, oh, he's not getting touched for this reason, that reason, and none of them really added up. It felt like that was happening all over again, just to a young man that decided to stay here for all 4 years, which is gravely disappointing to me.
The 2 words I'll always remember Breon Pass by are loyalty and character. And again, we kind of already touched on it, but to see a player sit through 4 seasons and really not have a ton of playing time to show for it, his love of NC State always shined through, and that made him endearing to NC State fans near and far. I'm so happy that a player like Breon got to experience what we experienced last year, a player that never gave up on his love of NC State and stayed committed to the school because that's where he wanted to live out his college career and show others that your pure determination and commitment to a school should mean something. He was rewarded with a better reward than many college basketball players will ever see in their lifetime, to win the ACC in the fashion that we did, 5 games in 5 days, one of the most historic runs ever. And it didn't end there. He also got to go to and play in a game in the Final Four. I'm sure he will remember that for his entire life. So Breon Pass, very special player. Even though he doesn't have quite the numbers to show for it, he will always be remembered for his loyalty to NC State for years to come. Moving forward here, Ben Middlebrooks, Kenton. How will you remember the Benergy?
I mean, that's it. The Benergy, he's a guy that, he's one of those guys where you're just always stuck saying, oh no, oh yeah, there we go, Ben. And you're always kind of cringing and wondering, oh, is he about to pick up a cheap foul, or like what's going on with him? But he's one thing that you cannot say about Ben Middlebrooks, one thing that you cannot question, you cannot call into question, you cannot say to me, I'm worried about this and I take you serious as a human being. Was he giving every ounce of energy he had at all times? Was he giving you everything that he had at all times? Was he the greatest rebounder we ever seen? No. Was he the greatest stretch big we ever seen? No. Did he have the deepest post bag we ever seen? No. But you know what he did have? A motor that never quit. He was always willing to die for a loose ball. He was always fighting, battling, scrapping for every rebound. So, the Benergy abides, as they say. It is what it is. And when I think of him, I remember him with the Benergy.
Kenton already said it very well there. You never had to question Ben Middlebrooks' effort. You never had to question his energy because you knew every time on the floor, he was going to be a bull in a china shop. Good, bad, or indifferent, he was going to be out there giving it 364% of his effort. And so I've always appreciated that about him. There's obviously times I think we all wished he was a little bit more refined, missed a ton of little bunnies, missed some wide open dunks. One of the funniest players I've seen in quite some time to put on the red and white. But again, another guy, ACC champion, that'll live forever. Went to the Final Four, that will live forever. I will always remember Ben Middlebrooks by the 2 games that we played against Duke in the postseason. He was instrumental in getting in Kyle Filipowski's head in both of those games. And ultimately, I think that was a very unsung hero of those 2 games because Filipowski was the engine, him and Jared McCain. Filipowski was a major reason that Duke was not able to beat us in the postseason, and that's because Ben Middlebrooks went to work against that man. And so I'll always remember Ben for that. Again, another player that's a part of 2 banners that will fly forever in the Lenny.
Yes, sir.
Love always for Ben Middlebrooks. We'll miss him here in Raleigh. Moving forward here, Jaden Taylor. How will you remember Jaden Taylor, Kenton?
I mean, Jaden Taylor is a guy that was willing to do the dirty work, right? He, for all of his, for all of everybody talking about how much he dribbled the ball this year and, he just, dribbled the ball flat at times this year. Let's not forget the role that he was originally brought in to play was elite defender, guy who's going to knock down some mid-rangers here and there. That was what he was supposed to be. And last year, he did that. He took on other teams' toughest ask every single night, and he kept us in the game every single time. We were always there. I don't think there were too many blowouts from last year where it was like, oh, yeah, we had no shot from the get-go. And also, you want to talk about, postseason play with Ben Middlebrooks. Jaden Taylor and his defense, I mean, listen, you could talk about, Casey Morsell and what he was and all that. Casey Morsell wasn't out there for every single second of these ball games. And some of these other teams' elite scorers were. So who was the next guy up if he wasn't the first guy out the tunnel saying, go get the toughest ask? And that was Jaden Taylor. So, he adapted to a newer role this year, but he's still he's played some tough, as I like to say about Madison Hayes, he plays a pit bull brand of defense, and I like it.
Yeah, that on-ball defense in particular is something I always remember him for, and being able to roll out an on-ball defender of his caliber, it really helped NC State in a lot of crucial points of that tournament run at the end of last season. He did have that small, I think it was like an ankle injury or some sort of lower body injury late in that postseason, so he played sparingly, but when he was able to come in during that run, he buried a couple really big threes that I think get overlooked over the course of all those highlights. And so I'm always going to remember him for coming off the bench, even though for the majority of that season, he was supposed to be a starter and a main contributor, finding a new role in the postseason and still finding a way to make a huge impact. That's not a role that a lot of people can roll into as easily as Jaden Taylor did last year. This year, I think I could always tell that a lot of the younger guys really looked up to Jaden, and that's a valuable aspect to a team as well. I think he'd be the first to tell you that this season did not go the way that he wanted to either. But another guy that you could really never question his effort. He was always giving it all he had on the court, good, bad, or ugly. I guess I'll say this about all 4 of them. ACC champion forever, played in the Final Four, flags fly forever, and he had a heavy hand in 2 of those banners. Last and certainly not least, MOC. How will you remember MOC as a Wolfpacker?
MOC or MO3, ladies and gentlemen. The shot against UVA will forever be the moment that's remembered, but I think the totality of what he did last postseason goes so far beyond that. Because when you think about the style of guard that he is, it perfectly complemented DJ Horn and DJ Burns. Those are 2 high usage, those are 2 ball dominant high usage guys. And so you needed a guard to complement them. That was okay working without the ball. Or that was okay saying when the ball is in my hands, I'm looking to set the table. I'm not looking to score. And so MOC blended in well there. Obviously, this year we didn't have guys like that who were going to be ball dominant scorers who did so as high or efficient of a clip as a DJ Horn or a DJ Burns. But, MOC, he's the guy he's the straw that stirs the drink. He's the guy that kind of makes it happen and sets the table for everybody else. It just was unfortunate that we didn't have enough hungry forks at the plate this year, so that kind of works out how it did. But again, you can never forget that run does not happen.
Yep.
If not for him at multiple points. When DJ Horn was out against Louisville, if MOC does not absolutely light it up in that second half, what happens? We're having a different conversation about our head coach potentially in terms of whether or not he has a job if MOC doesn't do what he does. If MOC doesn't hit that shot against UVA, none of the Final Four run happens. Obviously, the ACC championship doesn't happen. So, that is definitively one of the biggest shots in Wolfpack history.
The shot that started it all, and that picture will live forever amongst Wolfpack fans. And I think I really hate it most for MOC that the season went so poorly because I don't want it to ever detract from what he gave us last year in the postseason. That shot will be one of the most magical moments I'll probably remember for a long, long time. And I think a lot of Wolfpack fans will say the very same thing. Also, I think something that gets looked over from MOC last year, that game against Oakland in the round of 32, they had Jack Golke. They had just beaten Kentucky. Late in that game, MOC had a couple drives to the bucket for some and ones that proved to push NC State over the edge. We might not even make it to the Sweet 16 without MOC. So not just one, but multiple moments of him rising up to the occasion and putting the team on his back, putting Keats on his back as well. Again, he very much saved Coach Kevin Keats' job at least for 2 years. But MOC, man, what more can you say about it? We'll certainly always remember his contributions. ACC champion forever. Wish we could have gotten more of him in the Final Four. A lot of people think that game against Purdue might have been different, but nonetheless, made it to the Final Four. Flags fly forever. This senior class will have some of the biggest impact we've seen in quite some time on NC State basketball. They will forever be remembered in Wolfpack history, and we thank them for their time in Raleigh. Coming up next, we're going to switch gears and talk about NC State baseball. I guess there's going to be a black hole at some point. NC State baseball has not one, but 2 midweeks. We'll talk about that after a quick word from our sponsors. Last couple minutes here on Thursday. Real quickly, want to cover some NC State baseball. They played UNCG on Tuesday. They won that game 10-0. Played the Campbell Camels on Wednesday. Won that game 11-1. Kenton, is NC State baseball back?
I would like to say so. This is why we didn't push the panic button super early. But this team still has a ton of ball ahead of them, right? This is a situation where, again, we have said over and over again, these midweeks need to be taken as seriously as the weekend series. And what a 2-game stint to get off the snide. What a 2-game stint to show, you know what? We are able to beat teams that are probably going to be tournament teams. We are able to beat teams in midweeks, especially that have traditionally whooped the wheels off us these past couple of years. We're going to find a way. And again, it's just like, we always say, sometimes you just need to see the ball go through the hoop. Yep. This is that for Wolfpack baseball. So, shout out to those guys for getting 2 big wins here, and hopefully they can parlay this into a little bit of catching heat going forward.
Yeah, a couple really good wins here in the midweek to build some momentum, which is something this team was looking for after a rough early month. The pitching, both days, Cooper Consiglio on Tuesday, 4 innings, just 1 hit, no runs, no walks, 6 punch-outs. Anderson Nance in relief, 5 innings, no runs, 2 strikeouts to hold UNCG on the road to 0. Again, that's a team that beat Wake Forest earlier in the season. That was a solid win. Then Wednesday, of course, the Campbell Camels. Jacob Duden actually got the start in this one. They switched things up to build some momentum for him as well. 3 innings, no hits, 6 Ks, and he looked exactly like the Jacob Duden we were expecting to enter this season. I've told you already on here, Kent and I have been very adamant about his talent. Get him rolling, get him some confidence, and he will very quickly return to form. Hopefully a quick spot start like that on Wednesday will do exactly that. But the offense the last couple of days as well, Chris McHugh, he continues to be a dude. He's swatting at a high level. Alex Sosa, I'm worried a little bit about his K rate, especially once we get into ACC play, but he's starting to continually heat up a little bit. Josh Hogue get a grand slam on Wednesday. The offense was all you could ask for. 2-0 in the midweeks. Obviously, they host Wright State in a weekend series coming up this weekend. If you can get to 5-0 on the week, keep those building blocks rolling. Sweep the week, and then you'll get into ACC play next weekend. That would be a very good place to be at the absolute least. That'll do it for us here on Thursday. As always, thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button, drop your comments. Let us know what you thought about the senior night win in the Lenny over Pitt. Let us know your thoughts on the impact left behind of these 7 seniors and the 4 in particular that are ACC champions as long as the sun rises in the sky. Anything else you have on your mind, drop that in the comment box as well. Mash that subscribe button. We'll see you right back here tomorrow on Friday for more. And until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.